Hi guys, Nigel here from lawfulrebel.com. In this video I'd like to just distinguish my own thoughts from those of Derrick Broze. A couple of months ago I interviewed Derrick and it was about freedom and the community he's setting up. And in some respects, I didn't agree with everything he said, but I didn't want to cloud the conversation at the time. But I just want to put down my thoughts on the topics we discussed. So what is freedom is the first one. And in my view, freedom can't be a matter of opinion. It has to be something specific. It must be defined. It's no good if everyone has their own understanding, idea or vision of what freedom is, because then everyone would be pulling in different directions and we'd never achieve our goal. Yes, everyone does have their own idea or their own vision of what they would do in a free society or how they would choose to live, you could say. But this isn't the same as everyone having their own understanding of what we're trying to achieve. To be clear, what we're trying to preserve or achieve is political freedom. We're trying to preserve the freedoms we still have and, in fact, hopefully achieve full political freedom at some point in the future. Now, freedom is a very broad concept, of course. It includes freedom of thought, freedom of association, freedom of religion, freedom of action, freedom of speech, all these things. And in the most holistic sense, you could say it includes freedom to choose your own favourite colour and freedom from your internal tyrant or chatterbox. Free from negative beliefs, but things like these sorts of things, freedom from limiting beliefs that a number of thought leaders mention, this is a personal problem or a personal challenge, and it is not what's being taken away from us, okay? Klaus Schwab, the WEF and the collectivists are not trying to take away our freedom to work on our limiting beliefs. Okay, so we must be clear about this. They're trying to take away our political freedom, our freedom of action, freedom of speech, freedom of movement. So it's important for us to remember that when you're incarcerated by the state in a prison cell, you're still very free to choose your own thoughts and to choose your favourite colour and to choose to work on your limiting beliefs. But we have to be very clear that it's full political freedom that we're talking about. And political freedom I define as the ability to act according to one's own judgment, free from the interference of other men in the form of criminals or governments. Now, I think it's unhelpful to speak of freedom in the physical realm. Okay, there's no other realms where our freedom's being taken away. Okay, freedom it's just a nonsense. We're talking about freedom here in reality where we live. There aren't any other realms that are applicable to the freedom that we're being forced to give up. Now, it's very important to also remind ourselves what freedom is not. Freedom is not escape from painful circumstances. It's not freedom. We're not talking about freedom from responsibility, okay? We're not talking about freedom from the constraints of reality. And we're not talking about freedom from the requirement to produce things to sustain one's life, freedom from work. It's not any of those. It's also not about individual liberty for collective liberation. This is very, very suspect language or wrong language. Collective liberation is not a concern, okay? If every individual, single unit of humanity, if every individual is free, then we're all free. Your freedom is my freedom, is your freedom. There is no need to talk of collective freedom. And if anybody does, it's the collectivist language creeping in, okay? We have to remember that the collective is a mental abstraction that represents a number of individuals. Okay, it is individuals who actually exist, and it is only freedom of the individual that matters. Okay, it's very, very important to get hold of that. Personal sovereignty is a key concept on our road to political freedom. Sovereignty means highest authority. To be personally sovereign means that you are your highest authority. Personal sovereignty is the recognition and active practice of being your own highest authority, shaping your life through self-awareness, conscious choice and personal responsibility, whilst respecting the autonomy of others. Personal sovereignty is rooted in the acknowledgement of self-ownership. It's based on the right to live for one's own sake. And it requires a broad personal knowledge. It requires that you be the captain of the ship of your life. You are in command when you're personally sovereign. And this is essential if you want to be free, if you want to be a fully autonomous individual. So personal sovereignty is not a concept that we want to water it down by saying, well, it's just bodily autonomy. Personal sovereignty is bodily autonomy. Well, yes, bodily autonomy does come into play with personal sovereignty, but personal sovereignty is much, much more than bodily autonomy. It's also not simply the non-aggression principle. It's much more than these, okay? The non-aggression principle, on the other hand, is something that sovereign individuals practice. It's the recognition that reason is the proper way to deal with other human beings at all times. Either, there's only two choices: either with violence or force, or with reason. And reason is the proper way. And that's the non-aggression principle. But we must remember that it's also completely possible. It's possible to be completely non-aggressive and yet totally dependent on others. So personal sovereignty is a state of being sufficiently functional to be independent. It's independence, intellectual independence. It's not any form of dependence when you're personally sovereign. So personal sovereignty is not just the non-aggression principle, and it's not bodily autonomy. It's a much broader concept, okay? It's being your own highest authority and being in command of your own existence with nobody else interfering. What you say goes. So the campaign for freedom is indeed a war of competing ideas, but this doesn't mean that we just argue with idiots on the internet, okay? It doesn't mean that. It means that a handful of very specific ideas must prevail in the minds of a significant number of any significant percentage of any particular population. This is essential for the condition of political freedom to come into pass. It's a consequence of these particular ideas. That's why I say it's a battle of ideas. It's a battle of altruism against egoism. It's a battle of reality versus reality being real and independent of consciousness versus consciousness creating reality. Those two ideas are in conflict, and only one of them, reality is real and independent of consciousness, is the basis for truth, knowledge and freedom. So very important when people tell you we create our own reality with our thoughts. There's a lot of confusion around that point. But the third idea is the morality of rational egoism versus altruism. This is a really important battle of ideas for freedom to come to pass. If we're all focused on being altruists and giving up our values to the state, to the collector of the sacrifices, then that's an idea that is going to trap us in servitude. There are lots of other ideas we must reject. For example, the belief in the need for government, believing that sacrificing our values is good, believing that emotions can tell us what's true, believing perhaps that happiness on earth is impossible. These are all ideas that must also be challenged, but not quite as crucial as the first three. So, education. Yes, I think that the Prussian model of education does not work on everyone. Some people retain the capacity for independent critical thinking in spite of it. But I don't think it's a personality type or a genetic type that turns people into thinkers or submissive automatons. I hold that it's the fundamental ideas they accept to be true that determine a person's predisposition to think or not, to act independently or not. The metric that the self-declared elite are indeed aware of is that the predominance of reason in the minds of men is what enables their critical thinking and their ability to suss out false ideas. The false ideas that are spun to exert political control. Bogus pandemics, bogus climate emergency, these sorts of things, as well as the fundamentals. Reason and freedom are corollaries, my friends. They go together, reason and freedom. In an age where reason predominates, then in the minds of men, then freedom comes to pass. This was Rand's idea, not mine. Observe these days that at the same time that our freedom is slipping away, Western culture is descending into increasing irrationality. Just one example being the gender nonsense that's going on, and teaching 5- and 6-year-olds about masturbation in class and other absolute insanities. But there you go. In other words, reason is in decline. My suggestion is this is by design. So let's talk about community. We must remember that whenever we discuss community, we're talking about men dealing with each other in a social context. So we're necessarily in the realm of politics before we even start. Now, I don't mean we're in the realm of the left-right Punch and Judy show kind of thing that passes for politics, but we are, we are in the broader philosophical subject of how men, the principles that determine how men should interact with each other. Okay, this is the subject of politics. So anything to do with organising communities is in the realm of politics. And here we have to be very, very careful if we're setting up communities that we intend to model freedom. So to prescribe anything in the realm of politics in the community is anti-freedom. If there's any degree of management, of rules that have to be signed up to, if a community decision has to be made about whether a particular fence is put here or whether a pond goes there or what have you, then what's being done is not a model of freedom, okay? It's a model of an alternative form of governance. Similarly, as soon as you create imposed dispute resolution mechanisms, you are in the realm of governance immediately. And so for those who are serious about voluntarism and the non-aggression principle, it must apply to every aspect of our lives, and especially in the realm of politics, because this is what freedom is all about. So while it's perfectly okay for groups of people to arrange to live together in whatever ways they wish, according to whatever principles or rules, that's fine. But it is not a model of freedom, okay? The only way it can be a model of freedom is if you have zero obligations to your fellow community members apart from the non-aggression principle. That's the only one. There's nothing else. Derrick mentions in our interview the term sociocracy as an inspiration for his community. Now, I didn't know what sociocracy was at the time, but it's a little bit troubling. Sociocracy is a term coined by Auguste Comte, okay, in 1851. So he was a man who was a staunch collectivist, okay, and he also coined the term altruism. And he was very much against individualism. It was all about the group. It was all about sacrificing for the group. And he started or coined the term sociocracy. So let's be really careful about that. So here's a description of sociocracy. Sociocracy is a governance system designed to create organisations that are egalitarian, everyone's the same and equal, emphasising equality, consent-based decision-making and self-organisation. It is comparable to democracy or corporate governance methods, but focuses on ensuring that all members have an equal voice and that decisions are made by consent rather than majority vote, avoiding the pitfalls of majority rule and promoting cooperation over competition. I don't know about you guys, but I do not like the sound of sociocracy. I prefer freedom. So whatever kind of community that Derrick is setting up, it's not a model of freedom. It's a model of an alternative form of governance. Now, personally, I want freedom, not another form of governance. My vision of community is different to Derrick's. I envisage a landscape which is like a patchwork of small holdings, anywhere from 2, 3 to 5 acres that are privately owned. And I intend to do this. This is a plan I have to buy a farmer's field, about 50 acres maybe, and dividing it up into 10 or 15 different small holdings. And then through private ownership, each farmer, each household or each individual that manages that piece of land is entirely autonomous. There are no rules governing anything. There's an invitation to cooperate, and if we did cooperate, and I would suggest that everybody in such a situation does, then that would be much to our advantage. And of course, in such a project, I would be looking for people who are interested in setting up the kind of community I am, although there would be absolutely no rules and obligations, excepting the non-aggression principle. It's important to remember on that note that when we respect the non-aggression principle, this is a demonstration of our respect for other people's rights, for other people's autonomy. There's no such thing as too much freedom in case we transgress against other people, because the call for freedom and the demonstration of the non-aggression principle is a demonstration of the respect for the rights of others. So let's move on to property rights. In a community, it's crucial to recognise property rights. They are the only physical expression of the basic right to life. Without property rights, there can be no other rights and no possibility of freedom. Notice our eroded property rights with taxation. We are not free because we live in servitude. We have to give up always under threat of force from our governments. And this is going to get worse, the taxation and the erosion of rights. But anyway, the foundation of property rights is owning your own stuff, your own piece of ground, basically. Your own place, your own mini jurisdiction, where you can practice your personal sovereignty, looking after yourself and being your own highest authority. Derrick cites an example of the concern in a community that if someone owns the land with avocado trees on it, the community would be prevented from having access to avocados. This is wrong thinking. This is simply wrong. If there's a piece of land with the avocado trees on it, then maybe it's more valuable for a start than all the others. So the eventual owner would have paid a little bit more for the avocado trees and the land. Then he owns that means of production. He can either let people come and pick their own avocados, or he can pick, package and sell them himself. He will be the provider of the avocados for the community. Or he may choose to chop the trees down. It's up to him. But the point is, it's not a problem. It's in all its sensibility, nobody's going to cut those avocado trees down. They're going to use them for the productive capacity that they have. And it simply means through the division of labour that other people can do other things rather than provide the avocados. So it's a false concern, essentially. It's something that doesn't need to be worried about. Now, my views on Freemasonry also differ considerably to Derrick's. Freemasonry, according to my knowledge, has infiltrated all establishment institutions, and almost all significant governments. Notably, its structure is one of secrecy, in which the individual does not know what goes on in the inner circles, and the only way to progress up the hierarchy into these inner circles is by invitation. Now, this combination of secrecy and invitation is very, very significant. It's deeply suspect, since virtue gains nothing from concealing itself. Only evil can benefit from concealing itself. It's very, very important to understand. In other words, these characteristics are the hallmarks of an evil organisation. Okay? Freemasonry, with just that structure, that's all you need to know that it's up to no good. Also then factor in that right across the spectrum of influential institutions and governments, you have 33 degree Masons. So they're clearly involved in the plan for our collectivist future. Furthermore, Freemasonry is mentioned in the Protocols of Zion. You may be familiar with these, and the fact that it is used by an elite, whether they're Jewish of origin or not, it matters no difference. And this is just, I see this as just a distraction and a confusion to try and drum up hate speech and division. That there's a self-declared elite who are using Freemasonry as a tool to exercise their global influence and control. So I'm very suspicious of Freemasonry, and I don't excuse George Washington as write him off as not really being a Freemason because he said he hadn't been to a lodge for a number of years. This is not credible in my view. But anyway. So attempts to water down the involvement of Freemasonry in the orchestration of our enslavement are suspicious to me, because it amounts to siding with or excusing an organisation that not only lends itself perfectly to corruption, but it is also deeply embedded in the global power structure. Now, I don't know why Derrick chose his stage name of 33. He says it's because he was 33 when he started. I mean, surely his knowledge of all of this stuff and the significance of the number 33, it doesn't look like a wise choice of stage name, frankly, because it simply looks as though he's to do with things, you could say. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I shall be putting out another interview, the next episode of my podcast, over the next coming days. So thanks for watching and continuing to support me. Cheers.